J.D. Vance did an interview. It was the same interview where he said that in the event of Trump's death, he feels that he was prepared to do Trump's job. That clip, him saying, what better job training could one receive than the past 200 days, has been used to support the idea that Vance has been preparing for Trump's death, that Vance has been preparing to replace Trump. Now, given the fact that, this statement was published within the time window of Trump's mysterious absence from public life, I don't think that's an entirely unreasonable assumption. At the very least, I think it's been on J.D. Vance's mind, A lot of people are really concerned. I used to be really concerned about J.D. Vance being president over Trump. And over the past year, I have completely flipped on that. I think that J.D. Vance would be a much, much less effective arbiter of evil than Trump. I think that he would be much worse at doing bad things, even if he is definitely a worse person. How about Miller? Miller ain't going to be president. And Miller's basically shadow president right now anyway, so I don't think that's going to change. Making the president more amenable to Miller, as J.D. Vance certainly would be, wouldn't necessarily make J.D. Vance more effective of a president than Trump. I used to think we were lucky that Trump was incompetent, that Trump was a braggadocious idiot who didn't know how to do anything. And over time, I've come to realize that it's actually his greatest strength. I think that in reality, the things that make him ineffectual are also the things that make him functional. It's weird, but you can't actually have a diligent, studious, extremely efficient fascist. It's not possible. Fascists are anti-empirical, right? The things they believe are objectively wrong. From their positions on the economy, to their positions on race, to their positions on culture, to their positions on, international trade or international relations or transgender people or whatever else. They're just empirically incorrect. And these are not matters on which they're willing to be persuaded. They're not going to shift their positions in the face of better evidence. They're not capable of it. So, I don't actually think being smarter makes you a better, more effective fascist. Mussolini was not really smart. He was just bold. Hitler was not really smart. He was just bold. Franco was not really smart. He was just bold. Pinochet was not really smart. He was just bold. Usually these people leaned heavily on somewhat more competent, more intellectual types around them, more studious aristocratic fascists who did a lot of the actual managerial work, but they couldn't have been the leaders. You couldn't have replaced them with their more diligent. I'll give it to you perfectly. Okay, Zhukov was 10 times as smart as Stalin, but Zhukov could not have run the Soviet Union. Does that make sense? The contradictions of the state would have collapsed in on themselves without somebody as long as you were trying to maintain the apparatus of a state that Stalin had constructed, one built on paranoia, labor camps, and mass executions. Mussolini didn't think much of Hitler. Neither did a lot of people who knew him personally. Anyway, I want to listen to a little bit of this, and I want you to ask yourself, is this the man who can lead the Republican Party? Is this the Genghis Khan who can unite the disparate, warring hordes of villagers across the United States? Is this their torchbearer?
Thank you, Mr.
We're not going to watch the whole thing.
Vice President, for sitting down today with USA Today. And we'll be discussing the first 200 days of your vice presidency and your plans for the fall. But first, I do want to get your response to some breaking news and current events, including President Donald Trump's attempt to fire Lisa Cook from the Federal Reserve's Board of Governors. He says it's over alleged mortgage fraud, but she has not been charged with a crime. Is this about forcing the Fed to cut interest rates?
Well, a couple of things here. So first of all, I don't think anybody doubts that Lisa Cook committed some mortgage fraud. Whether a local authority decides to prosecute or federal authorities prosecute, or of course the president doesn't get involved in those decisions, but she made a mistake, and she potentially made a criminal mistake.
Immediate problem. Again, in order to unite the Republicans, you have to do a lot of things. You have to juggle a lot, right? You have to keep a lot of plates in the air, or plates spinning. Sorry, that's the phrase. You have to talk in a way that is appealing to a very large group of very bored, very stupid people. I'm not trying to do like the culture war bit, like haha, we're good, they're bad. I mean it though. Like the Republican Party, as it operates right now, does rely kind of on a Genghis Khan uniting the steppe model. You need somebody who can take all these different groups of people with all these different completely incoherent interests, a lot of whom are just people with strong cultural and personal and sexual grievances. You know, we're talking about people who are usually angry at the world but don't really know why, people who are upset that the world has moved on without them, people who are upset that girls won't call them back, people who are upset that their children won't call them in the retirement home. We're talking about people who are upset, angry, and usually unaware of the reasons why. So, in order to be that guy, you can't actually address their problems because a lot of their problems are unfixable, totally unfixable. And if you try to address them specifically, well, it's an infinite number of incoherent, often mutually contradicting problems, right? You have people who have problems with the economy, but also people who have problems with the fact that we participate in international trade. How do you fix both of those at once? You can't. International trade has to continue for the economy to function properly, for it to function better. Even there's no way to solve both of these people's grievances. So you don't want to solve any grievances. Instead, you have to be a kind of I don't know, culture war shibboleth. You have to be a great big monster who attracts attention, who is the main character, and who you root for, not because they're fixing your problems, but rather because they're the main character. Is what I'm saying making any sense? Donald Trump is appealing to these people not because he fixes their problems. That's why when interviewers go to like Trump Town and ask like, hey, how do you feel about Trump's performance even though your life is objectively worse and he's doing the opposite of what he said he'd do and everything is going poorly? And they'll say, usually, I'm not happy about these specific things, but overall, still glad I picked him. God, I've seen so many interviews where it basically boils down to that. The reason they like him is because he's the main character. It's the same reason why people root for, I don't know, Walter White, even though he's objectively a piece of shit. It's, you know, why there are a bunch of people out there, midwits all, mind, not high IQ, who will write up these big pseudo-intellectual editorials on how the guy you thought was the bad guy in the story about the anti-hero is actually the good guy. In reality, they're just falling for an extremely basic, like childishly simple narrative trick, which is that you root for the protagonist. That's all. And that's what Trump is. JD Vance is not a protagonist. He doesn't have the energy. He doesn't have the charisma. He doesn't have the inertia. He doesn't have anything going for him. He's an awkward, clumsy millennial who, in a typical midwit fashion, tries to actually directly address people's concerns and problems. Do you know how Trump would have responded to this woman's question about Lisa Cook? He would have said something along the lines of, this woman, she's very nasty, she's very bad. Some people said that she was doing a good job, but I don't know, I think they're crazy. We got to get rid of her. And that would have been that. That would have been that. You can't press him for details because he doesn't know anything. His low IQ, his unwillingness, disinterest in the specifics is his strength. JD Vance can't do this. He can never do this.
And the question is, do we want a person who makes a mistake like that to be a person who sits on the Federal Reserve Board, which makes important monetary policy for the entire country? I think that position should be held to the highest possible standard. So whether it's criminal, whether it's intentional or not, we know that this is a person, I think, who doesn't meet the standard that we should expect for the Federal Reserve, which is why the president...
Meet the standard that we should expect for the Federal Reserve. See, when you try to sublimate the fascist will into rationalism, you make it weaker. Fascism is not rationalism. Fascism is idiots hooting and hollering. It's screaming. It's blood. It's fire. You know. It's self-destruction. It's ignition. It's combustion. When you go, well, no. I'm different. I'm gonna pursue the fascist policy agenda, but like in a policy wonk way. You're bro. Who the is going to appeal? This kind of rhetoric appeals exclusively to like the Curtis Yarvin, JD Vance, Peter Thiel, like Twitter intellectual fascist crowd. A very small crowd. There's a reason why Curtis Yarvin and Peter Thiel are famous and popular only to very unfuckable people, not to broader audiences. Speaking of, did you see Curtis Yarvin recently conflate Romanian people and Roma people? He saw a tweet saying like Romanian people do anomalously well in test scores, and he quote tweeted it, and he said, well, we need to investigate why the Roma, despite that, underperform in every other country. So that's the kind of guy we're dealing with here.
Fired her, and he does have the legal right to fire her. And this goes into a second, I think, a much more fundamental question. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that Lisa Cook had done absolutely nothing wrong.
Let's just say, for the sake of argument, buddy, Ben Shapiro is not relevant anymore. It is not 2018. We are not living in that era anymore. Nobody cares. I mean it. I'm not just trying to pick him apart or like make fun of him for being a nerd or whatever, or for looking like that. I swear to God that I'm not. This is really, really important. A lot of people fear him being president. I don't. I do not think he could maintain the coalition. I do not think that he could maintain this balance that Trump has successfully managed, mind you, of scaring but also appealing to the capital class, like, you know, kind of menacing them with threats of punitive action, taking 10% of AMD and Intel, that kind of stuff, but also, you know, appealing to them because they're like, woo, stock market, let's go, while also doing the aforementioned Genghis Khan horde bullshit with the Republican base. I don't think it's possible. I don't think he can do it. But all of what you say has to do with J.D. Vance's lack of charisma and appeal to the public, but appeal to the public doesn't matter if there's no more elections. Incorrect. Dictators have always needed to appeal to the public. For one, the coalition that Trump holds is not just the public. It's also the business interests. The United States is not an island floating in a void. There are other countries, other powers, and some of the corporations in the United States are themselves so powerful that honestly, a weak president might fold to them alone, right? Like the military-industrial complex, Apple, Nvidia, the amount of money that circulates through some of these industries is great enough that, look, it's not just about the president, you know? If a weak president can't maintain a dictatorship in a country that holds this much international interest, oh, maybe, you know, elections get thwarted for some time or whatever, but he won't be able to meaningfully hold that power and use it, weaponize it, because he won't hold the coalition. He won't hold the mandate of heaven, to use that term, I think correctly in this context. He won't hold that magical ability to keep the capital class in line, the public happy enough that they stay productive and don't revolt. Another example, by the way, of Trump's unique skill. I think that if there was any other president as bad as Trump, who did the things Trump did, but wasn't as goofy as Trump, I think that he would have caused a national shutdown by now. I think that Trump has a unique ability to make everything around him less serious because he's a deeply unserious person. He has, in a way, despite being the president, jester's privilege. J.D. Vance does not have this. Trump is utterly unique in this respect. Yeah, he's like a kid, basically, you know, and everyone, even his enemies, kind of treat him this way. I treat him this way. Lefties do. Liberals do. Yeah, he's awful. He's terrible. But he's still a clown, and it does mean he gets treated differently. Yeah, Boris Johnson deliberately weaponized this. He did it consciously. I think Trump does it unconsciously.
Isn't it a little preposterous to say that the President of the United States, the elected President of the United States, working, of course, in concert with Congress, doesn't have the ability to make these determinations? What people who are saying the President has no authority here, what they're effectively saying is that 7 economists and lawyers should be able to make an incredibly critical decision for the American people with no democratic input. Like, I thought the people controlled this country, the people made the determinations in this country.
How does it matter if Republicans still have the USA for 4 more years? Well, for one, the midterms. That's big. Without Trump, who the knows what the midterms will look like? And second, also, again, where's your imagination? Haven't you guys seen what happens in countries where an authoritarian leader is replaced with a much, 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 much weaker one? Things break apart really quickly. Other higher-ups in the GOP start trying to pull off their own pieces, advantageously, like take their own little chunk of power, ripping up the coalition in so doing. More and more voters break away and start to favor like alternative candidates or complain about the results of previous elections, legitimate or otherwise. Again, public opinion always matters. Strength always matters. There is no kind of authoritarianism that has escaped this burden. It always, always, always needs the mandate. And if it doesn't have it, it will fall apart every time. It might take a while, but it will fall apart every time.
Through their elected representatives, including the President of the United States, I don't think that we allow bureaucrats to sit from on high and make decisions about monetary policy and interest rates without any input from the people that were elected to serve the American people. And I think that's fundamentally what this is about. Who makes the decisions about this country. Is it those the American people elect, or is it unelected bureaucrats? And I feel very strongly that the President of the United States is much better able to make these determinations. And by the way, if the American people disagree with the president, they of course can throw out the president every 4 years and throw in a new president. But you can't say that the American people, that the democratic decision-making process has no influence over monetary policy. That's
Jesus Christ, right? He sounds exactly the same as every other member of the party. If anything, he sounds nerdier because he hasn't developed the political reflex for kind of shifting into allegory or misdirecting. He just engages with the topic like a nerd. And he won't change, by the way. Like, remember the months and months that Ron DeSantis spent trying to be more like Trump that failed utterly because you can't? That degree of shamelessness and confidence comes only from an entire lifetime of being a pedophilic TV reality show host.
really, I think, an anti-democratic principle.
John Bolton, John Brennan, James Comey, Letitia James, Adam Schiff, they're all among the current and former officials the administration is now investigating. Does the president have an enemies list?
No, not at all. I think the president has a view that we should enforce the law, and if people broke the law, then of course they should face some prosecution for doing so. You know, all the people that you named, they're at some level of investigation, but unlike the Biden Department of Justice, what the President of the United States has told his Department of Justice is let the facts and the law drive these decisions. If you do these investigations and it's determined that
New photo of Trump from Midas Touch. Oh, Jesus. Ooh. So they didn't allow any press to speak with him at the entire Virginia golf course, departure. And here's him waving to the crowd from the beast on the way back. Jesus Christ. Yeah, he looks eepy, man. God damn. Well, makes this all the more prescient. The article says the press pool was kept far away. Yep. 2 days in a row at a golf course, the press pool kept far away. How interesting.
nobody broke the law, then of course you don't prosecute anybody. But if you have people who broke the law, if you have people who violated the public trust, if you have people who mishandled critical information in a way that harmed the American people, and they've committed a violation of the law in the process, of course you've got to prosecute people. I think unless you prosecute people who broke the law, you don't have a real constitutional republic. So no, the president has been willing, frankly, to pardon people from the other side of the political aisle. In my hometown of Cincinnati, P.G. Sittenfeld was prosecuted by the last Department of Justice. The president issued that pardon. He's sort of a famous Democratic official. This is not about politics. This is about the law. And if the president thinks a person has been unfairly prosecuted, he'll pardon that person or commute their sentence. If he thinks a person has violated the law, whether they're a Republican or a Democrat, he's going to encourage his Department of Justice to go after that person.
I want to turn now.
You guys all like really captivated by this, by the way? Out of curiosity? Are you like super gripped? Is it grippy? Is he grippy with it?
To the National Guard.
Sure.
Are the deployments to cities such as Baltimore and Chicago how the White House plans to fight crime?
You know, it's an interesting question. I think the president has the legal authority to deploy the National Guard to fight crime. And obviously, we're going to do things that are in compliance with the legal processes of our country. But the president said a couple of times in the past couple of days that he really wants this process to be driven by the local authorities here, whether it's the state government or the local mayors. And I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, look, we don't want to go in where we're unwelcome. There's a political reason, because what might very well happen is that these people, mayors or local governors, stand up and say, we don't want the National Guard. This is a dictatorship. Trump is a fascist, blah, 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 blah. We don't want people to stand up before a press conference and accuse the president of being a fascist, accuse the National Guard of being part of some dictatorial coup, when in private they're actually thanking us for bringing law and order.
Why? Okay, just politically, why would you ever acknowledge any of this? If you're a fascist, all you should be saying, like, okay, in public statements, like tweets or whatever, J.D. Vance has said, you know, these evil, pro-crime Democrats oppose the National Guard because they love criminals, et cetera, right? Why would you ever, unless you were intellectually insecure, talk to the press and go, well, we don't want people to think of our deployment of the military to crack down on crime as fascistic or dictatorial, while people like secretly like it. You know, why would you just lie? Just do what Trump would do. Lie and say everyone loves it. I've had friends who have told me that actually everyone in Chicago is looking forward to them arriving. You can just lie. It's not like anyone's going to fact check you on that. This is exactly what I mean. That's what fascists do. There are tons of people more qualified to be in this position than J.D. Vance, okay? There are tons of Republican pundits who would reflexively lie here. But he's like, it's intellectual insecurity. And by the way, look, I haven't read the whole thing because I have better things to do, parentheses, still watching Joseph Anderson play Umineko, end parentheses. But I have seen passages of Hillbilly Elegy, and intellectual insecurity seems to be this guy's brand. Like, desperate attempt on his part to align himself with some imaginary higher intellectual caste of fascist rather than like what MAGA really looks like, you know?
Order back to these communities. So there's a political reason not to do it. There's also just a basic cooperation reason to do it. I mean, look, if you look at Chicago, if you look at Baltimore, if you look at Los Angeles, these cities have murder rates that are totally unacceptable in the world's wealthiest country.
Lower than like a bunch of red states, but go on.
We should want, whether you're black or white or rich or poor, you should be able to walk down America's city streets in safety and in comfort. You should not, if you're the mom or a dad of a young kid, have to cross the street when you're walking through San Francisco in broad daylight because there's a crazy person screaming at you on the street corner. We should have some basic level of comfort and security in our streets. And what the president has said is if these local mayors and if the local governors want help, he is more than willing to provide it. I think that he could provide it even without their request. But fundamentally, the president, I think right now what he said is we want to work together with these localities. We want to bring law and order back to American streets. We want to make America's cities safe again, but we want to do it working in concert with local authorities. And that right now is where the president is.
Right, but would they be...
Why do politicians love saying look these days? He's a millennial, okay? I don't know, I've been pondering this question. Could the Nazis have taken over Germany if Hitler had been killed in World War I? Look, I'm sure somebody else could have been Hitler. I think the more important question is, how would all of this shaken out if Hitler had died in 1934 and somebody like Göring, Goebbels, Himmler, or Bormann had taken over? And my answer to that, I think, is that it would have fallen apart. The real nightmares of Strasser became the leader? Yeah, well, I guess you would hope that Hitler took care of him first. Hitler was just charismatic. It's not about well, it is about charisma, but it's not just charisma. It's weaponized, malicious stupidity. You have to be willing to treat the truth very lightly. Intellectual insecurity has no place in this movement. Not for their sake. For our sakes, I'm glad it exists. You have to have, like, the luck of fools, you know? Do you think Vance believes in fascism? I don't think anyone believes in fascism because it's idiosyncratic. Fascists adopt a wide variety of beliefs that all kind of lead in the same direction, which is, you know, usually hierarchy, power, etc., etc. Do I think he believes in hierarchy? Yes, I think that he believes that white people are greater than non-white people and men greater than women and so on. You know, even if he intellectualizes those processes in his head, I do think he believes those things. I think that he's just kind of he's following the path of least resistance, you know, just as many others are. Where's the timestamp in this when he talks about the replacing Donald Trump? Is that in here? I mean, it is in
Florida, not just on the redistricting question, but he's been a very effective governor in a whole host of ways. I haven't talked to Mike DeWine recently about the redistricting fight, and the completely falling apart because the Biden administration had chronically underinvested in it. Yeah, we showed up.
It's 1426. You're so good. You're so helpful. Thank you.
Playing a little bit of hardball. We think a lot of Republicans are gonna do what we think is right, and we do think that on balance, this is ultimately going to make American elections much more fair and much more credible to the American voter.
You and the president have now rebranded the One Big Beautiful Bill because, as he admitted, Americans just aren't buying it. How is changing the name going to convince the roughly 10 million Americans who will be losing health care as a result of this?
Is this it? I don't think this is the right timestamp. 1426, you say? I don't know. I don't think this is it.
Well, what the president said yesterday is that one big beautiful bill is a great name for it when it's a bill, but now it's law. And now we have to actually explain to the American people, we've got to do the job of politics and actually talk to the American people what's in the bill. And the reality is it's the biggest working families tax cut in a generation. It increases the child tax credit. It eliminates taxes on tips. I knew a lot of folks who depended on tips. When I was growing up, a lot of single moms who waited tables who are now going to get a big tax cut because of this legislation.
I saw it.
It eliminates taxes on overtimes. I know a lot of people who work those
1742. I got it. I'm so smart.
And why should Americans trust you to lead the country? Well, oldest people to ever. As vice president, you're a heartbeat away from the presidency. And your boss is one of the oldest people to ever be sworn into office. You're one of the youngest people to ever be second in line. Are you ready to assume the role of commander-in-chief? And why should Americans trust you to lead the country?
Well, I've gotten a lot of good on-the-job training over the last 200 days, but also say that the president is in incredibly good health. He's got incredible energy. And while most of the people who work around the president of the United States are younger than he is, I think that we find that he actually is the last person who goes to sleep. He's the last person making phone calls at night, and he's the first person who wakes up and the first person making phone calls in the morning. So, yes.
In Mussolini's palace, his aides were instructed to keep the lights on in his office at all times to reinforce the myth that he was always up late at night working. They say this about everyone. Always. They say this about everyone. Do you see Vance immediately revoking Trump's tariffs? No. If Trump dies, he's going to be their mythical figure. Revoking, like changing big pivotal Trump policy right after he becomes president would be tantamount to stabbing his memory in the back.
Things can always happen. Yes, terrible tragedies happen, but I feel very confident the President of the United States is in good shape, is going to serve out the remainder of his term and do great things for the American people. And if, God forbid, there's a terrible tragedy, I can't think of better on-the-job training than what I've gotten over the last 200 days.
What does Usha think about you running for president in 2028?
I think she thinks what I think, which is let's focus on the job that we have right now. Let's do as good a job as possible. And if that door opens later on, we'll figure it out then.
Well, you have young children, and you've talked about the
And I'm sure, by the way, that having a president with an Indian wife will play really well with a specific crowd of extremely active Republican voters. What the hell is going on at the White House? Seriously? God, it's so difficult to engage. This is one of the reasons why I was not one of the first people to hop on the Trump, dead Trump ailing health train. It's because people, the rumor mill and like the speculation, you people are so incredulous. It's impossible to sort out what's real. You have to wait for journalistic sources, but you can't wait for journalistic sources because the journalists don't talk about anything that Trump is doing. I sent an article, then send it again. Same video from Occupy Democrats. You really think I'm going to trust a video that has this thumbnail? Something suspicious just came out of a White House window and the video footage instantly set the internet ablaze. Are we being real with this? I know I'm just a live streamer, guys, but I do have some pride, okay? I have a sense of dignity. No red circle.
Something is afoot at the White House this Labor Day as strange unidentified objects are flying out the windows. Possibly.
This guy's demeanor is not conveying legitimacy.
Containing the last shreds of American credibility. Go figure. Welcome to Occupy Democrats. I'm David Reddish. And yes, I'm back after my jaw surgery. And yes, I'm still swollen, so I apologize.
With a 90,000 square foot.
I'm happy to eat.
They mentioned there are his ex-wife Ivana, the window. Take a look and tell me what you think in the comments. Here we
God, really? Jesus. Whenever I think that I've engaged in like yellow journalist hackery, I look on the state of the internet today and I remind myself that I'm actually like really far away from the bottom tier. What do you think this potentially groundbreaking thing is? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Jesus Christ. By the way, this constitutes the Democratic response. Occupy Dems, Patriot Takes, and Call to Activism are all DNC affiliated accounts. Yeah, that's true. Watch Mojo top 10 Dem slop. People love it. Gets a lot of views. The comments look automated. That's just what Democrat voters talk like. This guy again? People don't realize this is weird because after 9/11, the windows were all replaced with sealed bulletproof windows included in the residence. To throw something out of the window means taking the window out of the window pane itself. But security protocol says contractors can't have access to the residence while the president is staying at the White House. So if work is being done by a contractor on the private residence, that means Trump wasn't at the White House last night / this morning. I mean, that sounds a little bit more credible than, you know, X-Files music. Let us know what you think in the comments. The International Association of Genocide Scholars has decided that Israel's engaging in genocide in Gaza. Great. What do? Watch one of my videos? I came to that conclusion a while ago. So is there no actual news on the White House thing? Because it is weird. I wish somebody would, like, date the video. Okay, all right. I don't know, seems like a nothing burger to me. I mean, it is, like, weird for like trash bags to be thrown out of the top window like that. That is not normal. Mysterious bag from White House window sparks wild theories. There's no information in this article. Literally none. This article contains no information. Well, it was at least an article. Having done construction, it's normal if they're doing some kind of work in there. It's not normal to do it out of the White House windows. That's not normal. Chat's insane today. It's an insane kind of day, to be fair. You know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. You can't stop me. Like and subscribe. Also, this is a website, chat. It's called, it's vosh.gg. There's funny frogs there.